Let's move on to our second main topic today. Chris, what is our second main topic today?
This question comes from Gino R. There's been this sort of accepted story that people are leaving the movie theaters to watch streaming services instead. But I just read a report on Deadline that said the opposite, that streamers are more likely to go to the movies, and only about a third of regular moviegoers actually watch streaming movies on a regular basis. Have you read the article, and what do you think of its conclusions? Thanks. Are you familiar with this article, John?
Yeah, I actually did go and read the article in question, and it's actually pretty damn fascinating, as a matter of fact. And it was done by ComScore, did this study, and they presented their results earlier this year. But they did this study about the comparisons about the, migrational habits of movie audiences between theaters and streaming, because, the person who asked the question is right. There is a narrative here that everybody's leaving the movie theaters to go and watch just movie streaming at home. And their study found, and this is a big, long study that has tons and tons of facts in it, but their study actually found it was actually the opposite. Here's one of the quick quotes. Now, this was reported in Deadline. People who stream movies also really love to go to the movies, says Paul. Okay, here we go. Durgarabedian, ComScore senior media analyst, pointing to the survey stats showing that only 34.3% of Post-Track's moviegoers poll taken in streaming at home. In addition, 25.7% listen to music online. Streaming and the moviegoing aren't adversarial. They are, in fact, additive and complementary. Now, one of the other things that it goes on to say in this report is that in actuality, the people who watch the most movies streaming at home go to more movies in the theater than anybody else. And this reminds me of a discussion we used to have a while ago, Aaron, about, home theater systems. Right? Mm-hmm. There was this argument a number of years ago that, with home theater systems getting better and better and better, bigger TVs, better sound systems, that more people are just going to watch their movies at home. I'm going to get a big theater system. But then this study came out. Remember, we talked about this about 5 years ago. This study came out showing that the people who had invested the most in home theater systems with big TVs and surround sounds, they're the ones more likely to go to the movies because they are clearly the movie fans. Yeah. They appreciate movies more, and they're the ones who actually go to the movies more. And now here we have that same conversation coming up about streaming. And it's really interesting that, one of the big things people have been worried about those leaving the movie theaters are that 18 to 24-year-old demographic saying, they're not going to the movies anymore because they're playing their video games and they're doing this. They got YouTube, they got all that kind of stuff.
They're doing Instagram stories.
Snapchat, sexting, all that kind of stuff. They're too busy. In actuality, the study found that they are still just that 6-year age gap, 18 to 24. They're still the number one demographic going to the movies, as a matter of fact. So it's kind of interesting that we have a lot of these assumed ideas about what's happening, and then when studies like this come out to actually put some facts in front of us, it can be a little bit jarring. Anyway, I found this to be pretty interesting. Aaron, you hear about the results of this. What's your first takeaway from this?
I did read the article, and I too was fascinated with the correlation between, because it seems so obvious. Of course, people who love movies are going to watch them no matter how they can get them. They're going to stream them on their phone. They're going to watch them on the movie in the movie theater. They're going to watch them at home. So that actually makes a lot of sense and completely blows the theory that, I and many others have had of saying, oh no, it's going to, people are not going to. I've been saying it nonstop. Why would you get out of your pajamas when you can just watch the movie at home? And I love the fact that it's young people. And I think that the Darabaragarian,
I think you just said it better than I did.
Darabaragarian. Yes, the senior media analyst who was in charge of this whole project. I love what he said when he was talking about the 18 to 24-year-old demographic, that people are still going to the movies for dates. He said some things just never change. And I thought that was really interesting because that is the classic thing that you do when you're first courting someone and you're young and you don't have a lot of options, especially if you can't go to a bar or a nightclub. You're going to say, hey, let's go to a movie. I also think that people who love movies are going to want to have a certain type of of experience with certain types of movies. I don't necessarily want to watch a comedy by myself in my home, or a Fast and the Furious, something, or what was the one, Crawl. The kind of movies that you want to watch with an audience, so that you can have that audience reaction. Those you're gonna go out to the theater to watch. So I'm really excited about this. About this survey. I think that it really shines a light on what's actually happening in the movies, and it gives us a much brighter picture of the film industry.
One of the interesting things about this is that it makes me think then about, well, the other fact here is that year over year, there's been, while small, still noticeable, a decrease in the amount of people going to the movie theaters, right? So although box office is going up, there's actually been a slight decline in attendance, and that's been a pattern. So it raises the question, okay, if it's not streaming, what is it? And to me, it still brings back an uncomfortable truth that the movie industry doesn't want to deal with. It has become too expensive to go to the movies on a regular basis. Yes. Chris, we talked about this the other day as well. When you're talking about, and look, and I know it's different prices, different areas, but if you live in the area that we live in, the Los Angeles area, the New York area, or Chicago area, or something like that, if you want to go to a movie, and heaven help you, if you want to see a movie in one of the premium formats, whether it's IMAX, Prime, Dolby, things like that, which is the best way to watch these movies, but you want to take you, your spouse, 2 kids, and get some refreshments while you're there.
When did I get kids? Shit, where are they?
Welcome to your life, Chris Carr.
Oh no!
This is my nightmare. No,
I take my 2 dogs.
You're talking about $100+.
Yeah,
sure.
Just to go to a night at the movies.
Absolutely.
How many nights can you go and do that per month? And I've said for a long time that I believe that there's a systemic problem in the industry as a whole. Studios are spending too much money on making these movies. Look, going back to Neil Blomkamp's District 9. He made that movie for what was it, $30 million?
I think so. It was so good.
And it's so good, and the visual effects are so revolutionary. Now, granted, I'm sure he had some deals to be made there, but you can't tell me that Hobbs and Shaw, as much as I had fun with that movie, you can't tell me that movie needed to cost $200 million to make. There's no way you can convince me of that.
Well, had Neil made District 9 later in his career and had the studio getting involved, it probably would have had a $200 million budget. Probably. And that just goes to show that you don't need it. But the more success that you have and the more people that you get involved, and the $20 million plus actors that you bring in also are jacking up the price.
And who ultimately pays for that? The studio pays more to make the movies. That means they have to get more money in return. And who ultimately pays for it? You pay for it, I pay for it, and therefore the ticket prices continue to rise and all that kind of stuff. And I've been saying for years, I think this is something that the industry as a whole has to take their head out of the sand and stop ignoring this and pretending like it's not an issue, and address it and think we've got to come up with a way to curb the rise of prices and going to the movies, because we're making it cost prohibitive for people to come and have these great shared experiences. Like 18 to 24-year-olds, the movies are the best thing to do on dates, and you're making it cost prohibitive to do it. Come on, do something about it. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. Anyway, Chris, you're hearing about this story and the streaming, all that kind of stuff. What's your take on it?
I mean, I'm really surprised, honestly, that streaming isn't affecting moviegoing so much, because everyone I talk to never wants to leave their house. No one ever wants to get up. No one wants to put on pants. And there's this great joke by John Mulaney of doing nothing is like heroin for adults, of just, I did nothing. It was amazing. It was great. But 18 to 24-year-olds are so GD poor. How are you going to go to a movie? How are you going to afford those concessions? I mean, I still sometimes am tacky and I sneak stuff in.
Always.
You know, or I'll be like, I'll just keep this food with me. But it becomes this huge, costly thing. So I'm thinking that money has more to do with it than streaming, like you guys were saying. And I mean, without getting too political about anything, we basically have no middle class anymore, at least in the States here. It's hard for the average Joe to go see a movie with their whole family. It's so expensive. You got to wait till it's at the dollar theater.
Yeah, when going to the movies...
What's a dollar theater?
Oh, there's a couple dollar theaters here in Los Angeles. So
what?
The
I've
movies
never
as they're
heard
on the
of
way
such a
out.
thing.
Girl, stick with me. I'm so cheap.
Well, I'm into it. And speaking of not wearing any pants, hey, the three of us...
None.
No pants Thursdays.
No pants.
We talked about this. We don't share this. We don't share this.
I do have another possible conspiracy theory of why there's not a lot of movie going. And as a television girl, I gotta say, TV has really stepped it up. Because that's
very
another
true.
thing, is if you can stay at home and watch Chernobyl or Years and Years or When They See Us, why would you go to the movies? Unless you really want to see whatever movie is coming out. But let's face it, and there's always been classic TV. I mean, hello, Hill Street Blues. I get it. At the same time, TV was TV and film was film. But now you have a lot of those lines being blurred where you have television shows that are being shown on an epic scale. I mean, you would never have seen a show like Game of Thrones in the mid 80s. That just didn't happen. And so as these lines are being blurred, I think that people are getting their fix of these massive epic theatrical like stories at home and maybe not feeling that need to get it in a theater.
Well, see, the funny thing is, I think the same principle about the home theater owners and the streaming people, I think the same principle might apply to that. I kind of find that the people who are really like a Robert Meyer Burnett, who is really into modern day TV, he's also inclined to be really into the movies. Like, they're the people who appreciate this so much that they're probably the people who are more likely to go to the movies.
But I hear people talking more about TV shows that they're watching than I do movies that they're seeing. And I'm not talking
sure, because
about,
you can do it from home for free, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying is, I think, and I'm not talking about the diehard movie lovers. I'm talking about the average citizen who doesn't want to put on pants and doesn't want to spend $100 on a Thursday night for entertainment, is much more apt to just flip through HBO Go, Netflix, Hulu. What's the latest show that I can stream and still watch something for an hour plus and feel like I've gotten my fill of beautiful storytelling in a way that we never saw before in television history.
All right. Well, the question is, have you guys had a chance to see this article in question? What do you think about the findings of it? And if you buy into the findings of it, what do you attribute then year after year? Granted, it's a small drop, but it's a continuous drop of fewer people going to the theaters themselves. Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right.